Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Wherever you are, thank you for joining us. This is your host, Adil Bandukwala. Other than the fact that India made a phenomenal win against England today in the Test series, I'm super happy. In addition to that victory, I'm also super happy because I'm going to be conversing with my close friend, Naveen Narayanan, today. He's someone from the industry I had the pleasure of knowing for many years now. We first met when Naveen was the global head of talent management at HCL many years back. I'm guessing that was around seven odd years back. He was at HCL, and since then I've been in touch with him. I've enjoyed interacting with him. Naveen is a celebrated thought leader and has recently launched his new book called Inner Silence. Welcome, Naveen. Congratulations on your new book. Naveen, you're in
Thank
mute.
you
You
very
probably
much.
have to start again.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for hosting this podcast. I look forward to the conversation.
Oh, absolutely, Naveen. The intent, ladies and gentlemen, by chatting with Naveen today is to learn how one can scale their purpose and potential as we talk about this very interesting theme, two peas in a pod. Naveen has literally scaled organizations. He's been a part of high growth functions. He's built phenomenal teams. He's got a phenomenal track record. And then he's got a cult line of followers. So, for all of you who really enjoy Naveen's company, welcome. And I'm super delighted to kind of understand and break down today what really are the tips and tricks that we can use to try and see how we can scale our purpose and potential. Naveen, would love to know the backstory on how you went about authoring this book and who this book is really for.
Awesome. A couple of first, before I get into the backstory, I think it is useful to know that everybody likes a quick tip and trick in every topic, but if you really want to know a little more of the dimensions, what may help is there is something called as the three-pot theory that is there, no? Which is if you want to understand today's conversation, if you're a bit like the inverted pot, no, which just bounces off everything, a leaky pot, which just, feels nice today as you're hearing it, or something which is muddied and you're trying to figure out to say, does this make sense? All those three of the methods and mindsets may not help in today's conversation. My urge to you is try and come with a clean mind. Just give it a chance to absorb this dimension. If it works well for you, good for you. That's there. But otherwise, my backstory, I've been reading about this from a teenager. I don't think, suddenly if you just wake up one day, you get to write philosophy and something based on Hindu spirituality and so on. My parents are probably just almost monks. But I think for my purpose, I'm one of those imperfect seekers who's trying to get somewhere. And it's a little bit of my own journey and my own learning in some ways. But I think I must confess to say, even 2000 years back when Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras, he actually called it a compilation, right? So, which effectively meant that it was something that was written even before that. So all I can say is I'm only a compiler with a little bit of a modern twist, hopefully, that appeals to you.
Very, very interesting with the whole compiler analogy. And Naveen, I've got lots more questions lined up for you. But, I just wanted to give a call out to all those people who have just tuned in. Now, all of you who have joined it across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, if you all would like to ask a question to Naveen right now, please come on board and put your comments exactly where you are, whether it's on my LinkedIn post, Twitter post, YouTube, or Twitter. As long as you reply on that post and just comment, your question will come in directly here. I'll be able to flatter on the screen, and we'll have the privilege of asking this to Naveen, and Naveen can answer that. All right. So do put in your questions if you want. If you've met Naveen after a long time, go ahead and say hi. Just like Anurag has joined us, and Anurag is a teammate from Naveen's team from way back in the day. So Naveen, Anurag says hi. We're also seeing Nandini, who's just tuned in. So Nandini's Very proud, Naveen. Again, congratulations on the book from Nandini and from all of us. And with that, so if all of you have any kind of questions, any kind of comments, do send them in as soon as you type your comments wherever you are, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. I'll get it here and then I'll be able to flash that for Naveen on screen. On the compiler question, let's go a little deeper, Naveen. Naveen, you know, the book starts with some very intriguing and open ended questions, which can take quite a while for people, especially like me, to figure out and process some very hard questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? How does one really go about deciphering these, I thought about it. Man, this is really really hard to articulate, decipher, and it doesn't come quickly. I'd love to know how do you go about doing this.
So, neuroscience says that 95% of who we are a creature of habit, right? And by the time we are probably 30, there is a view which says that every emotion, expression, reaction, feeling, everything is just the nature of habit, right? We think we are probably being very free willed with freedom and so on and so forth. The second question that always intrigued me is, unfortunately, if you see in the past, everybody who comes to this question is only after a lot of suffering. For some strange reason, right? Let's take an analogy. Um, the Gita was actually told to Arjuna now in the midst of the battlefield, when psychologically, I mean, if you analyze it, he was called as, the state is called as an anxiety neurosis that he was having. The question comes to is, why wasn't it told? He was whiling his time for 14 years in the forest. I mean, Krishna could have said, here is a syllabus that I'm going to teach you on who am I, what am I, and so on and so forth. But somewhere I think you have to come to a place where you want it. My view is that a lot of people, I think, kind of indulge in it sometime during 31st December, 1st January, syndrome that goes on and then go away. But anyway, a couple of, since you said tips and tricks that may help. I'm not going to go through a whole list, but a first good list that is there is, try and make a list in your life, overall life, not work, overall life, in terms of things that you like to do, things that are beneficial to you, right? And you will find that there are some which are very far away, right? And so you may like to eat junk, but it may not be beneficial to you, right? Easy example. You may like to, probably a difficult one, you may like to bribe and get things work faster. Is that beneficial to you in the longer run is another question. The second thing probably useful is a very interesting technique in the Upanishad that talks about it, which says, saying, list out the things that are feel bad now, good later. List out the things that are feel good now, bad later, right? Let's take the same example. Every kid you ask who goes to school says, I hate school now, good later. Right? Same, let's go back to a favorite food habit, which is somewhere like, no, I mean, you like to eat something now, may not be great later for you, right? The third one is a little more abstract, which is try and make a list which is things that are permanent in life, impermanent in life. Gets a bit fuzzy, but give it a try, right? So this gives you a start building something which is, a little bit of discernment, distinction, and so on in your mind to say, what do I want, right? The second thing that is there is, primarily we assume saying that this whole concept of purpose is something that is magically going to come to us, and which is something outside of what we do now and is going to elevate everything from here onwards. Absolutely flawed. So let's go back to the same story. When Arjuna was having his anxiety neurosis, he gets the best ever education on what is life, who am I, everything else. He later on goes back. He wants to actually say that he actually pleads to Krishna to say, I want to go and become a monk, right? And And he also says, saying that I don't want to fight, let them have the kingdom. Now, there are a few things to peel in the story. Now, the learning from here is that Krishna actually tells him, saying, go back and fight the war. So this concept of purpose is outside of what I do now, right? And if something has to be noble, something has to be, no, I don't know what it is absolute rubbish, right? Because you have to go back and do what you want to do. The second thing that is there is Arjuna's dilemma is he wants to be the king, right? So he's fighting the war to be the king, and hence this selfish motive is not able to help him. And the shift that the education makes him do is to say you have to fight it because it's the right thing to do. So there's a bit of duty and right and selflessness and many other things that come. And then Krishna offers to say, why don't you win this, finish it, and then go be a monk, right? And so I think we'll have to think through to saying that the whole concept of let me find who I am is not to run away from where you are, or it is nothing that is coming that is going to come magical in any form. Again, since you said tips and tricks, a couple of quick, easy things to do is try and sit for 5-10 minutes in silence, right? What it says is that your eyes are 50% stimulation that you get from the world. The ears and other sense organs, another 20-30%. Just sit somewhere and see whether you can sit for 5-10 minutes in silence. You will find that, people do talk about, we go to the topics of mindfulness and many other things, but somewhere this concept is of trying to monotask at least for 10 minutes in a day. We love to multitask. I'm the greatest, I thought at some point in time, multitasking. But I think it is flawed in many ways. The concept of if you want to find your answer is to monotask, right? So I think that is the key overall in this whole piece that is there.
Yeah, I think very interesting points on introspection in terms of monotasking, because we're just living in this world of multitasking. You're always doing five things at the same time, and it can often be very, very helpful if you just go down and go of just focusing.
It's a
People have a
recipe.
lot of compliments to you.
It's a recipe in
Sorry.
my view. It's a recipe in my view for misery, in terms of multitasking. A couple of other things that are interesting, which come back to management theory, right? If you remember Peter Senji's work in terms of the 5 disciplines and the 5th discipline that are there. In the 5 disciplines, he talks about one of the disciplines, which is suspending judgment. One of our biggest problems that is there is we are very judgmental as people, right? Now we've gone even more, right? We have judgments on people who we don't know at all, right? On social media, and an issue we are not an expert on, a truth we have no idea at all. A reason for misery in some form. The second interesting analogy that is used is also to say is that just because you have legs, you don't keep on running. So just because you have a mouth, don't keep on shooting it, right? Or just because you have eyes, don't keep on doing something about it. The sense of the concept of withdrawing is the first step that everybody suggests to you, which is a step towards contemplation. Interestingly, I use the story quite a lot, which is the best hunter in the jungle, the tiger or any of its brethren, is only successful 1 out of 4 times, and actually knows how to deal with failures the rest of the 3 out of the 4 times. The best tennis player has the same thing. Dhoni, since you have bought cricket, the best cricketing captain has a success record which is less than 1 out of 2 times that he wins. The point that is there is that some of this contemplation and others also needs to be taken up a little bit as a sport, where you will find ugly things, and you need to know how to deal with it in some ways.
Very true. I mean, lots of appreciation and comments coming for you. Let's take a fun one by Anurag. He says, "Do you follow Sadhguru? You talk like him." What do you have to say to that?
I've not been lucky to have anybody who steers me so far. No, I don't follow anyone specifically. I think I have found, I mean, sometimes I think saying maybe I've not been lucky enough to find somebody who steers me in some form. Sometimes I find to say saying that maybe I'm lucky to find my own way, right? My own answers. I have my own way in which I want to find my own answers. So, it helps in that sense. No. Short answer is no.
Right, so there you go, Anurag. Naveen's answered that for you. Compliments coming in from Sapna. Sapna's really enjoying the conversation. She just finished reading the book, even, which is fantastic. She says your book has done a fab job in changing her perspectives about life, happiness, and purpose. So, Naveen, there you go. You're already kind of creating impact. So, phenomenal to see, Sapna.
Thank you for that.
Uh, Nand Kumar is enjoying the conversation as well. And then we got a very interesting comment from Ridhima. Ridhima saying that interesting to hear how you went about writing the book. The book answers many questions we've had from time immemorial. Not only her, but her mom finished the book in a record 48 hours. So, Naveen, is it time to turn the book into a Netflix show?
I'm sure some
So there you
producers
go.
listening to it, and you are more famous than I am to hear it. And
Come
no, but
on, Naveen.
I think
Nobody
somewhere
has.
I'm sure
Sorry, go on,
somewhere
go
I
on.
think this needs to be viewed as, at the end of the day, it's a service. If it helps somebody find their answers, I've not invented or discovered something around it. I mean, something that I always try to remember for myself, which is when a child, I mean, when a child is born and does not know gravity exists, right? After some time, wonders why are things falling down. And then one fine moment, the child figures out saying, if I throw something, it tends to fall down. So I have something valuable. I don't want to break it. And there's an aha moment. The child does not go around running to say, I found gravity, right? It existed before, it exists afterwards, whether the kid knows it, doesn't know it. The point that is there is that many of these things that once you figure out are not, you will realize it's a bit like that, right? I mean, it feels liberating. It feels refreshing. I think, I mean, a lot of my own personal confusion and things like that kind of got sorted.
Got it. Got it, Naveen. Naveen, very interesting question from Hannah Priya. She says, Naveen, what inspired you to write the book? Let's hear that.
I always, I mean, I thought this question and I wish I had a illuminous answer in some ways, which said that no, it was a calling or whatever. No, I mean, I think a lot of my friends who know me say that this is probably a decade late. And um, somebody I was speaking to a coach today to say that I'm also a bit of a contradiction where I've lived a life of logic, but deep down, I think I'm somebody who wants answers, who's a bit fluid, wants to explore a lot of these. And so maybe, I mean, last year allowed me a lot of time, like many others, tremendous amount of time, and it just came to fruition. There's actually a second book now in writing. So the other next question was, am I a one book wonder? The answer is no. I mean, I'm halfway through the second book. Hopefully by in summer it should be out. But that's purely on the mind. I think the first one was more like a commentary. The second one is more of experiential and practitioner led in some way.
Awesome, awesome, fantastic to hear that, Naveen. Let's wait. While we wait for the next book to come out, let me come to another question I've been meaning to ask you. Naveen, we started about talking about individual. Let's move to companies now. Companies spend a lot of time and effort unlocking employees' purpose and potential to ensure their profitability. You, above all, have
Yep.
seen this from very close quarters because you've been in the HR space and the business space particularly. When going through
Yep.
your book, I was surprised to see that spirituality actually adopts the same two P's. Um, I found it fascinating, and I wanted to understand how did you connect the dots here? What was your thought process on this particular interlinkage?
So, I mean, as I did my research, I find that many of the answers that we are looking for about how to manage mind, how to manage anxiety, how to manage stress, what is my potential, how do I understand purpose, all of these, there are answers that are there. Now, I know that sometimes scriptures don't sound very cool in some form. It is colored and mired in terms of religion and various other things, which is why I think there needs to be clarity to saying that if you want just secular truth, a higher truth in any form, there are answers available, right? So none of it that I say is religion in any sense. I'm not and I don't follow that much. I mean, I may draw from what I've practiced, but those are just a base story. But coming back to companies, we are living at this point, if you see in our civilization, last 50 years, last 10 years, last 20 years, never ever has the civilization in 5,000 years lived this comfortably, right? Never ever. I mean, even if you rewind 100 years back, we were fighting for food and water. 50 years back, same thing. So we are living in a generation which has great amount of comfort. We are living in, but we are also living in a generation. If you look at statistics, last 10 years, last 50 years, anything, mental stress and others are dramatically rising, and we still don't have recognition for it. So what is also interesting in neuroscience is to say that anywhere between 1 to 5% of our diseases are genetic. The rest of the 95% is lifestyle. So the choices that we are making, the way we are thinking, or how we have trained our mind, and how we are engaging with the world, so on and so forth, are not keeping us happy, right? Just broadly, if you say eternally happy in any form, definitely not helping in any of this thing. Now, if I go back to the Gita, which is a very powerful canonical text in some form, there is very clear articulation in it to say everybody has three key broad attributes: thinking faculties, action faculties, and activity led faculties, or inertia that is there. And each of these faculties are described in detail. It explains in terms of everybody has a mix, it has situations. We use that exact same thing in HR, right? We kind of try to look at to say, why is somebody a bit of a thinker, and hence these are the jobs right for that person? You know, a researcher, a poet, an artist, a creative person has certain set of faculties. There are some people who are a lot more sales focused, extroverted, so on and so forth. Now, those same words may not be used in a Bhagavad Gita, but they use, for example, to say there is somebody who's a thinker, there's somebody who's a warrior, and so on and so forth. Now, interestingly, I mean, if you look at some of these, which is superimposed with purpose and potential, the first thing that it says, the first uh, tip and trick, like you said, the first thing that it says is whatever you're trying to do now, right? Try and find a way if you can make it of a certain higher purpose. Because every time, let's take a sports analogy. Every time somebody thinks of this shot is going to win me the cup, right? And this next 5 games, right? There is a reason why a sportsman says, I only play the next ball. I only play the next ball. I only play the next ball, right? They do not necessarily kind of go in terms of trying to look for a selfish view of whatever is the fruit of that action. Every time you see, I mean, again, you'll find this in Good to Great as well. There's a lot of conversation in Good to Great to say the best leaders are the ones who have humility, right? The Gita says the same thing, saying selfless action, don't chase the fruit, right? And some of these which kind of gets you success in some form. Now, very interesting work has also happened, which I don't know whether companies are focusing on, which is just an integrated view to how to look at individuals, right? I don't know when companies will get to it, but hopefully if individuals can invest in themselves. There is enough in neuroscience today. You go to the Chopra Foundation, David Hendrick Foundation, Joe Dispenza, or anybody. It says that people who are focused on any integrated form of living, right? A little bit of meditation, mindfulness, watch what they eat, focus on some of the values of what they're supposed to do. Basic things, basic things that we all know, yet we never do, right? There is happiness that you can find, right? People have even now started proving to saying gene markers are changing, inflammation markers are changing, your genetic code is changing, epigenetics is changing, health is changing, right? They are even able to find today to saying, I can take your blood sample and tell you saying, are you somebody who's doing meditation? Did your father do meditation, right? Or your ancestors do meditation? There is scientific evidence available on it today, right? So it is not something which is to say just believe it because your grandfather said so, right? There's enough evidence out there. So I would think saying that companies should probably think to say if they want to invest in um, people in terms of deeper potential and so on. And I think we'll speak about it a little more in terms of how they could invest on some of these. Here are probably some of the tricks. These are all again secular. I have not used anything which is religious practice specific to any aspect that is there. The Western science, Western medicine is following it. Um, it's just a matter of time before I think companies probably try to look at any of these.
Understood. Lots more compliments coming in, Naveen. So Asha is saying that thank you for keeping the book simple yet intense. She's reading it slowly and taking multiple notes. So Asha, the right way to read the book, I guess, given what Naveen said, right? Avoid multitasking, focus, go slow, be mono in a specific thing. So again, Naveen, great stuff. We've got another question, which is from Anita. Anita says, Naveen, congrats on your first book. What is the best way to absorb new paradigms as well as have old prejudices and perspectives? What tips do you reckon?
Um, See, this process of finding truth is painful. Okay. Now, there is nothing new that I would probably be saying. And once you probably read it, you'd say, hey, I knew this from my fifth standard moral science class in school. The question that is there is that why didn't you do it? Right? There's nothing that I'm going to dramatically say which is that no, which you never ever knew. Right? It is largely common sense to come with. So our first problem comes when I said the first line that 95% of how we are ruled is through a habit. So every time you want to make a change, there is a reason why 90% of New Year resolutions don't work. Yeah. Let's step back for a minute. We are a creature which loves to create habit, right? Think about your own morning. You wake up in the morning and the hundreds of tasks that you do, you're not thinking to say, this is how I have to brush my teeth. This is how I have to do something else, right? There's just so many things. We've gone into work like that. We've gone into relationships like that. It's just habit, habit, habit. So there is something called as habit of the body. There's something called as habit of the mind and many other habits that we are creating. These cause in the mind something called as neural networks, right? Neural networks are like hard-coded software programs. What I'm saying and what science says is 95% of what you do is hard-coded. So why is it difficult? Because you think a beautiful art that philosophy uses or yogic sciences use is a monkey on an elephant trying to pull each other. The monkey is the mind, the elephant is the body. So you say, oh, I want to do meditation from tomorrow morning. The body tomorrow morning says, did you ask me? Who the hell are you to decide on this? Right? So these two are in two different planes. So every cell of your body will resist a change in habit every time. We have to go back to the old format which is there. The only way that they have scientifically found is when you meditate, you actually get into the operating system. You start getting into a system where you're able to trick the body and the mind and move them aside to say there is a new intelligence that is coming in over here. There are a few more things that we think have free will, right? There is a set of memories that we have. Now, it depends on whether you believe in Hindu faith or any faith, rebirth, not rebirth. But what you don't know is that probably your ancestors' cells and genes and memories are already in you. Evolution cells and genes and memories are in you. There's even a story which says saying that there is no iron content in the world at all. The only way, and the planet, the only way it comes in is when galaxies fuse. So the next time when you're having spinach or when you're having something else, you're actually probably interacting a lot with some of these. So the point that is there is, um, we think we are probably in control. You are absolutely not in control of this. Back to the question, it is hard for you to turn it around, right? It is really hard. The only way for you to do this is you have to remember that every neural network in your body will tell you what you're doing is wrong. It's rubbish. You're wasting time. You will go to meditation. Your mind will tell you, why are you wasting time? Why are you doing this? No, somebody else is not doing it. You could have slept. And it will eloquently keep telling you, the voice in your head to say, saying you're wasting time. If you get past it, you created a new neural network. People have done this. I mean, they have done this with abuse victims, drug victims, mental health patients. There is science available today to say people who've gone through anywhere between 4 to 11 days of intense meditation are able to change the neural path. So what they thought earlier, which said, I'm useless, I don't have purpose, I'm ready to die, the world doesn't like me, any of these things, suddenly you're ready to receive new information. And the new information that is there is to say, you're valued, somebody likes you, why don't you give it a try? And mindfulness and meditation is probably the one of the ways in which you go into that neural network and trick it. So the monkey and the elephant are moved a little bit apart, it loosens a little bit of things, and you move there.
Very interesting. So, you went into what was old school, but then you also blended it with modernity. So I really like that. More compliments coming in, Naveen. So we've got a user who says, you've got a listener who says, great conversation. Your thoughts are always inspiring and insightful. Keep inspiring, Naveen. And then we've also got Shrinkla who's on Facebook, and she says, the more I listen to your conversations, I explore something new from this life. Loved the way you explain experiences with analogies. 100% agree with Shrinkla. Naveen, next question I have for you is again something that I saw in your book but couldn't help but wonder. Is you say you asked your readers what are your spiritual goals for the next 6 to 12 months. Now, a lot of people might not really have a spiritual goal. Just for everybody who's tuned in, would love to understand, why is this important? How does one get started? And more importantly, when does one get started?
So here is my trying to connect certain disparate theories that you are also aware of. There was a recent survey, and there's a regular survey that happens, which is the happiness index that gets published. And the first, the most recent one says saying that a happiness index today is at about $75,000, which is an annual income. If you hit that, after that, your happiness does not seem to grow in the same proportion as the first few. Okay, so hold on to that thought, which translated in Indian rupees is about 3.5 lakhs per month, kind of a take home. Now, if I did a rough back of the envelope calculation, so hold on to that. The second is, we all know the Maslow's hierarchy, right? I'm somewhere in that $75,000 taking care of till I reach there: safety, security, belonging, so on and so forth. And at some point in time, I get to a place where I say, is this all? Our nature is such where everybody, because of whatever you believe is there deep inside us, the unknown, the higher truth, um, the consciousness somewhere kind of will push you to say, is this all? Right? There is something else to happiness. My sense is, you asked me this question earlier, which is, why, who am I writing this book for? It is for that probably the 30-year-old who first time comes in, who's probably has a family, who has a kid, who's got the 3.5 lakhs, right, who's hit those three levels of Maslow's hierarchy, and then suddenly wonders to say, something is missing, right? Something is missing in this. I want to do something. I don't know what to do. There is disturbance that kind of keeps coming in. It is for that person, right? So I think the starting point is really that trigger. Unfortunately, most people make change, right? History and research shows most people make change only when there's an anxiety neurosis, right? There's a reason why you are all Arjunas in many form, or the Arjuna mindset in many form. I've had my own. And so even if everybody knows cigarette smoking is bad, people do it. They know junk food is bad, they do it. Everybody knows take care of your health and exercise, they don't do it. And the list goes on. So it's not like you don't know what to do. Now, coming to spirituality, I think there are a few terms to clarify here. Now, if you're keen on, like me, you want to know just a secular, deeper truth, right? What is it? Who am I? What is it? What am I doing here? What is my, how should I be conducting myself, right, to realize my potential? There is a whole science on it of Vedanta and so on, decently secular, or mindfulness, and various forms. There are some people who may say, I just want calmness, right? Try and follow the Patanjali Yoga Sutras that are there. And this is not just doing some exercises, right? Patanjali, one of the 8 steps is exercise. There are a few others that are there. If you want happiness in some form, try and follow what you currently do, which is ritual, religion, and beyond some of the colors and politics that could exist. There could be a fourth choice I think you should be able to make, which is I don't want anything, right? I am happy to enjoy the circus over here in this world and enjoy the pleasures of it. We'll see what happens whenever it comes. Please make that choice as well, because I think what we do is we try to put a foot in all these four and we don't know what we want, right? So the first thing is to try and figure that out. I was clear to say I'm somebody who likes to know things as intellectually. I need to understand it, absorb it, synthesize it, and then try to live. Right? That's just the way I am. Um, my view is again a few things. If you want to just start off, you don't know where to start off. Start with probably some selfless actions that you want to do, right? Which is go somewhere, do some social service. I know a lot of people donate, right? Which is just on an online portal. Doesn't help. Go and actually do some field work somewhere for whatever time, whatever cause that you want to do. It changes the way you probably look at things, right? It's as good as meditation in many ways. I said earlier as well, sit in silence, try to sit in meditation, right, and so on. Now, people will say, oh, I'm closing my eyes, I'm not able to do this, right? One analogy that is used on meditation is if you have a bowl of water, it is filled up to the brim, and you don't need to, you shake it a little bit, it spills over. That's really how you are. Try and sit in just stillness and silence, and you will find every day, if you sit in it as a creature of habit, you will find that at some point in time you'll want to do that, in some ways. Read about it, read this book or read any other book, read voraciously, it may help you, right? So I think the whole concept comes back to saying is that, do you want, I mean, people want happiness, right? People want, they hit a point where they say, I want something more. My $100,000 is not helping me. My $200,000 is not helping me. Interestingly, you see the statistics. The most depressed societies are the ones which are the richest. The most depressed strata of people are the ones who are the richest set of people who are there. Highest consumption of opioids and stress releasing and inflammation and lifestyle specific drugs and so on are people who are rich, right? Or I mean, after a point, what you don't realize is the money is not making sense to me, or the material chase is not making sense to me, but I don't know what to do. Everybody, in my view, hits the point because that's just innate in us.
All right. With that, another question, Naveen. There's a LinkedIn user who's asking, "You're such an inspiration, but where do you draw your inspiration from?"
Um, I think, I mean, I had dedicated this book to my mother, and she Had she lived on longer, she died very early. Had she lived on longer, she would have become a monk. My father, I think, is an aspiring monk. He does a lot. He's a lot into his own work in Ramakrishna Mission. So I think somewhere those influences for the last many decades have been there. I mean, I grew up with books from the age of 16, 17. I mean, I had the Yoga Sutras or the Upanishads and others hovering around at home, right? So, like somebody else may have had fiction or some other books, and I read them. It didn't make sense at all. I mean, I went all over the place. I went in through my own material pursuits. I've not stopped my material pursuits. Let me be very clear. Um, but I think I went through my own turmoil personally, deep inside. It's just that this process has helped me feel better about it. I mean, it's not like I will not do a job for a salary, or I may do a few other things. Um, but I think my inspiration kind of comes from some of these things.
Got it. Another question, Naveen, which has come from Nupur Arora, again on LinkedIn. And Nupur says, many congratulations. And then you're already halfway through your second book. Please share, how did publishing your first book change your process of writing?
I think after I read the first book and once it printed, I realized saying, shucks, I should have written five other things. I should have written it differently. I think it feels exactly how you make a movie or a painting or any of these works that are there. Once you see it after, I mean, every 10, 15 days that I see it, I mean, the book has been post manuscript has been available from sometime September, October, and every 30 days I see it, I say, shucks, I mean, no, this is not how I understand it, right? So it's a bit like, for me also, it's a bit like I'm a travel blogger who's traveling and moving. My own thinking evolves. I get new insights, and which is what the second book is all about. I also want to make this transition from I think the first book is a lot of commentary for a first time seeker. And the second book is a little more about my own personal journey, dilemmas, and from that perspective, a practitioner's perspective more than anything else.
All right, there you go, Nupur. That was Naveen answering your question. And let's move on to the next question, Naveen. One of the statements that you talk about in your book is the best answers are inside you. How does one go about discovering these answers? I tried doing that myself, but I was a little perplexed and confused. Are there a couple of practical answers you can share with us where you, maybe your colleagues, friends, benefited by using a framework that you suggest? I mean, any practical way of doing this, maybe?
Sure. Um, I'll spend probably a couple of minutes explaining the concept. I mean, I struggled with the same statement for maybe 20, 30 years, saying, the best answers are inside you. I think you'll have to first understand saying that there is a structure in our mind. And the first thing is that the mind and the brain are different, right? Modern psychology doesn't necessarily accept it. They're coming to accept it. Neuroscience is coming to accept it at this point in time in the last 10 years, if you see research. But the yogic sciences knew this many thousand years back. The mind is divided. The way it is explained is very simple. There are radio waves that are there, which is like the mind. You need a radio to catch the radio waves and listen to the music. The brain is the radio waves is the mind, right? So the radio waves are there everywhere. That mind that is there all over you has four parts, right? Actually, it has many more parts, but let's assume it's four parts. The first part that is there is what we know as intellect, right? And this is the intellect that we grow in our school, college, various other things. I have a problem with that as well because I don't think we grow it enough. We grow it with just cramming information. I don't think we grow it with ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas, questions. The idea of an intellect is to find discerning and discriminating abilities in your mind. What is good, what is not good, right? Let me give you an example, right? If you were the Minister of Agriculture, which is a hot topic at this point in time, I gave you a choice which said saying, you use organic pesticides price of crop will increase, climate will be better, the poor can't afford it, some will die. You use chemical pesticides, price of crop will drop, climate may probably get affected. Everybody will be able to afford it. Nobody dies of hunger. Which one would you choose? Why would you choose it? Right? I feel these are the things in the intellect part of it in schools and other places. Now we have to probably develop this far better. What we now know is information, right? Which is to survive and so on. The next part of the mind is something called as the identity, right? Now it's mistaken as the word ego, and we have very wrong connotations of the ego. But ego or aham is basically identity. Father, writer, author, India cricket fan, Federer fan, and the list is endless. Problem that we are currently facing is our identity earlier used to be a lot broader, right, as a community and so on. Now our identities are becoming narrower and narrower and narrower, right? Which is also the reason why to say it's just you and me and we're ready to fight. The intellect always defends the identity. Always. They are supposed to be together. What we don't know a lot in our life, rarely, is the next two layers that are there, which is something called as the memory, and the memory has many parts. It has elemental memory, atomic memory, conscious memory, subconscious memory, karmic memory, articulate, inarticulate. The list is endless, right? So, an example that is there, a carbon footprint that was there millions of years ago, is actually running through you. The iron that was created in a galaxy is actually pumping in your heart at this point in time through the heme molecule that is pushing through your blood and so on and so forth. So we think saying that, oh, I'm in control, I know everything, so on and this thing, but we actually don't, right? A lot of this is coming. This is really the place where the inner answers are. Now, you may believe to say, again, two choices you have. As a faith, you may believe you had multiple lives. As a faith, you may believe saying that it is just a set of a ton of memory that is carried genetically and so on that is there. That holds a lot of answers, right? These things hold a lot of answers. How do you access this particular intelligence? What I know in my intellect is only what I learned in this life. What I know from my these 8 levels that are there of memories are something that is available for everybody, right? In different forms, it is available and it is easy. Just 10-15 minutes of meditation every day, you will start going beyond this. Contemplation beyond this identity that is there, you get over all of these shafts, you will touch this very easily, right? A very famous example, since somebody said Sadhguru, a very famous example that is there is, a woman eats banana, man eats banana, monkey eats banana. It's very interesting that the body knows that how to convert the banana to woman, man, monkey, right? It doesn't confuse it. We think we do a lot of these things that are there. My last point that is there is a little conceptual, but hold on to it and think about it. Every day we go through 3 states. The waking state, hopefully like now, and hopefully people are not sleeping. There's a sleep state that is there which has dreams. And then there is a sleep state which has no dreams, right? In the waking state, our engagement is in the first two layers, outside sense organs and everything else. We are not touching the rest of the things that are there. The second one is the dream state. Now, in a dream state, there are many times you know you are seeing a dream, but you are not part of the dream. Had that experience? Sometimes you are part of the dream. Sometimes you're not part of the dream. And when you wake out of the dream, you say, hey, that was just a dream, right? You dissociate reality with it. And then there's a third state that is there where you're in deep sleep. Now, you may be in ICU, you may be a mother, you are a CEO, you are a guy on the road. Everybody goes through that. And this is a state where people believe you actually interact with all these 8 levels of ecosystem that is there, right? This memory that actually creates banana into man, you actually interact with some of these. So It's conceptual for now, but I can tell you, saying if you've been there for 30, 35 years, you are doing this every day without you knowing it. Every day. You know how to dissociate yourself away from reality in your dream, right? There are many times you see a dream, you know you're seeing something, and it constructs amazing set of things, and then it switches off, right? So hold on to this concept. A lot of Eastern wisdom is based on these three states, right? And if you grasp these three states, absorb it a little bit, you suddenly realize that you actually have all of these inside you. Just a matter of time how you figure it out.
Fantastic. The key line being, like you said at the start of the book and the start of our conversation, you all have it inside you. It's already there. You've got to seek it and find it. But
Yeah.
discovery is something that all of us have to really focus on. So, Naveen, if we were to close by one advice you had to give to all of our friends in corporate and the startup circuit, what would that be? A single learning distilled out of your book, what would that be?
Be compassionate, right? I think that is the. This question has been asked many times over to many saints and many people, and they say, "Oh, there's just thousands and millions of things." You know, एक शब्द में बताओ, right? One word, right? I am the 2 minute Maggie noodle generation. I just want one thing, right? And there's a beautiful analogy or a actual real this thing that is there where somebody went and asked sadhu in Rishikesh to say saying that and the sadhu is answering who's a monk who's answering to say saying that I can give you moksha or liberation in 2 minutes. Get me a still mind. That journey is 99.99%, right? But if you really just want one advice, then that one advice is primarily compassion is probably a very, it is there again in us. It is there. We live it in some parts of it, but that is the only quality that will probably help you with understanding some of these truths. There are a few others as
All
well,
right,
which we can talk about for corporates, but uh,
all right. So be compassionate. There you heard it from Naveen. Naveen, tell us more. Where can people buy the book from?
The book is available on a Kindle version globally, available in bookstores in India, and available on Amazon. Soon will be available on Flipkart as well. The hard copy is available on online stores, but primarily the book is currently available only in the print version is available only in India. Otherwise, the Kindle version is available pretty much everywhere.
All right, so there you go. That was Naveen Narayanan. He's just come out with his lovely new book called Inner Silence. I had a chance to read a few chapters. I really enjoyed it. And there you see, we had a few users who said not only they've finished it, but we had someone whose mom finished it as well. And I'm glad people really enjoyed the conversation. Dipali, thank you for joining us. Glad you enjoyed the conversation. And do let Naveen know when you've got a chance to read his book. So, for all of you who streamed and joined in across Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube today. Thank you for tuning in. This was fun. Naveen, thanks for making time.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you everyone for listening in. I hope you buy the book. Look up the website as well. That's a good way to interact. Just naveennarayanan.com.
Right? There you go. Thank you very much, everyone. Signing off.
Thank you. Thanks, Adil.